Hello and welcome back to the show, and welcome Nell Mead. It's great to have you here. Thank you for joining me. Now, you are a particular specialist. You have a very unique set of skills, as Liam Neeson would say.
Yeah.
And you're very well respected, not just within the medical industry, but obviously you've worked in sport, you've worked in the military, but you have a particular reputation for dealing with very complex cases. So I think this is really going to be useful to the audience, for those in particular who have had a long-term injury and they're not getting any resolution. So, later on, we're going to help them understand why that's happening, why they're not getting any resolution, and your unique methods. A little bit later, we'll go into your unique methods of how they do that in terms of your health performance pyramid. We'll also talk a little bit about your book, which I think everyone should be buying, How to Be Your Own Physio. But obviously, I want to get into, how you came up with this method using all your experience, but in particular, sort of go into the little bit details that people don't understand, the complex issues that are going on with a long-term injury and how you recover. But also, it's about empowering people as well. It's empowering people to take control of that recovery, which you are very unique in. So before we get into all that and show people how they go about that, give us a little bit of background, because obviously you have vast amount of experience in this field. You're highly respected. You've won awards.
Done that bit, yeah.
So when you first started up, so what was the lead up to understanding and creating this method of yours that you found that there's a big gap in the market that you were able to fill?
So I spent my first 10 years as physio being in the British Army. I got up to the rank of major and I had a great time. I did some really cool jobs. I met some amazing people, but I also saw some things that I wasn't totally happy with in terms of, injury rehab. And I started to feel like people were being medically discharged and told that they'd failed rehab, when I sometimes felt that it was rehab that had failed them. So one of the things that I wanted to do when I left was to see if I could find a way to stop that from happening, to sort of the whole sort of no man left behind type concept, and see if I could, find a way that would help more people. And I got incredibly lucky, because a physio called Diane Lee came into my life, and she's an extraordinary woman. She's a Canadian physio, and her thing is a theory called regional interdependence, which is literally about how everything in your body is connected, and how it's all about sort of systems rather than symptoms. So we try and treat the underlying cause of the problem, not just the bit that hurts. Like anybody can if you know the anatomy, and you can put your finger on anybody's knee and go, oh, that's your medial collateral ligament. Yeah. Fine. But why is it irritated? Why is it sore? What's going on that made it that way? Particularly if there wasn't sort of one big moment of, you hit a tree stump while you were skiing and it snapped. Because for a lot of people, they have pain that they've just woken up with, or it's come on over months and there's no obvious cause. So in those cases, just pressing on the ligament and going, oh, that's what it is not super helpful.
Yeah. And it's interesting you say that, it's not, because from your perspective, you don't just deal with the mechanical, do you?
No.
Because very often a lot of these problems are more than that, because the body is, an interconnected unit, isn't it?
Absolutely. So many different systems interlinked and interconnecting and communicating with each other and screwing each other over.
I love the bluntness.
Your gut can mess up all sorts of other things. Your brain can mess up all sorts of other things. And so it's important to, not just treat the body in, isolated muscles or bones or joints or whatever it is. And to remember how important those connections are.
Yeah, and I think that's something people forget. And I guess, because you think that most physios would understand this, but I think because you're quite unique, there's not many people who've gone through what you have gone through and learned what you've learned to be able to help people. And obviously I've worked in sport myself as well.
Yeah.
And you tend to work in a very different way. So in terms of how you developed your method, by taking all the bits you've learned from the military, from sport, into where you are now, and people are getting fantastic results with what you're doing.
Yeah.
So how does that all fit together? How do those different, because obviously dealing with a military injury as opposed to an athletic injury, sorry, and someone who's maybe a more corporate person or a regular person like myself, how do you, am I being really stupid?
No, there's
it to each different person. How have those?
Yeah, because but every person's different, right? It's not just about where they come from; it's what their mindset is. It's it's whether they've got something big that they want to recover for quickly, or whether they're after a sort of more long-term solution. So it's about, everything is tailored to the individual, and that's what's important about it. But that's what's interesting about it. That's what floats my boat. Is I like the challenge of managing not just the injury but the individual.
Yeah. And I guess that comes in, you've got to understand their story a bit, because this is something that's come back to me time and again with many people I've spoken to on this podcast, is someone's story. Someone, you know, not just the story of their past, but where they want to be. What is it you want this to work for? It's not necessarily just because I want to sit on my sofa all day. Usually most people want to be active to some degree, even if it's just, you know, doing regular things without the pain, without the injury, and just feel like they're strong and healthy.
I think the biggest phrase I hear, or the most common phrase I hear, is, "I just want to feel normal again."
Yeah.
But normal means such different things to different people. So it's then about digging down and going, okay, that's great. What does it mean? and often it just means, I want to be able to live my life without thinking about my knee or my ankle or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Because what they really mean is, my injury is taking up too much brain space.
Well, this is the thing. I mean, actually, because I'm a big thing on mind-body connection.
Huge.
And when it comes to injury, I'm not talking about small injuries, big injuries. When it comes to the mindset, because even if someone's been told, look, if you follow this set of strategies, these sets of rules, you'll recover, you'll get better. But what is it that maybe holds people back from getting better, in a sense? What's going on, you found, in the mind first of all? Because for me, that's the first stage.
Yeah, and you know, for some people, of course, it's a sort of self-sabotage thing that's going on, or they haven't fully bought into whatever techniques or methods you want to use to get them better, or they feel like they've tried it all before, or they've, you know, I get a lot of people going, like, I've seen, you know, 3 physios, 2 chiropractors, and a partridge in a pear tree, and you know, nobody's got me better yet. Why are you different? And I'm just like, okay, tell me your story. Let's see if we can, you know, unravel it. We usually come up with something different. Whether it's necessarily hugely different, not always, but sometimes we usually find that there's some sort of missing piece in their treatment jigsaw somewhere, and it's often, you know, the one piece that they're missing, especially if they've seen lots of therapists and lots of practitioners before. They've often done most of the right things, but there's just one key piece that's missing, and if we put that into place, then they can really make the most of everything they've done up to that point.
Can it be quite a long sort of process in those early stages working with someone? Is there a lot you need to unpick and unravel before you get to sort of the sort of recovery stage, if you like?
It can. My assessment sessions are 90 minutes, so that I get a really good chance to go through their whole story. We usually, like 90% of the cases, we do a fairly thorough physical assessment as well during that time. But there are some cases where, you know, I'll literally be like, okay, we haven't even got to the end of your story yet at the end of 90 minutes. Come back another time and we'll make this happen, and we'll make sure that we get everything that we need to get. Because, as you say, some people's stories are very long and complex. And if I don't understand them, then I'm going to miss things.
Yeah. I mean, before we go into a little bit on the how you go about it, I want to sort of, what other things do you feel that people don't understand when they're going through an injury, in terms of, you know, I touched on, you know, obviously there's a pain thing that goes along with a long-term injury, but that I want to hear your what you feel, what you've learned, your research. You do an awful lot of research in the injury mechanics, as it were.
So I think for me, a piece that gets missed an awful lot is what I call the foundation layer. So it's looking at the tissue health piece. So it's looking at, it's the basics that we're all supposed to know about. It's the sleep, the stress, the hydration, the nutrition. Right? And when those things, so what I see in clinic when those things have been neglected for long periods, are that your lymphatic system gets very clogged up. So I can feel that your lymph nodes are swollen, maybe around your clavicle, maybe around your jaw, maybe in the groin, armpits, all those sorts of areas. And I think that really, it stops the flow of inflammation out. So I think it perpetuates a lot of people's pain, particularly if they've been in pain for a long time. So one of the things that I will very often do the assessment and then be like, right, everything is just too stagnant and too swollen and too painful. The first thing that I want you to go away and do is work on those 4 things and do some manual lymphatic stimulation work, and then come back and see me in 6 weeks when you've had a chance to get everything flowing better. And then we'll be able to see the wood for the trees. And that's a really, really common thing that I see.
Yeah.
It's just that people aren't really on top of looking after their tissue health. And if your tissue health is poor, then it's going to be very hard to respond well to treatment.
And it takes us back to this more integrated approach to looking at sort of recovery and building your health and wellness and overcoming an injury. Is very much, there's so many layers, which brings us to your sort of health performance pyramid, which is really built over, you've got the first half of it is really about your health.
Yeah.
The sort of basic foundation, and then you deal with the conditioning, the strength, and
then we start layering performance on top of that.
Because I've found with many physios, they go right into the mechanical, but like you say, maybe there's so many factors that are going on that are keeping you in this situation. So like, as you said, the tissues are not in good condition. If the tissues are not repairing themselves and healing well, because tissues do that very well naturally.
They can do that. If you look after them, they can do that beautifully.
And you've got to feed them with the right foods. You've got to
get nutrients in and waste out. If you get that combination going, then you're relatively onto a winner.
If there's dysfunction going on and all these things not in place, even yes, you may be able to get a certain amount of strength and stability back, but you're more likely to be able to fall back into pain and more.
It's like snakes and ladders, isn't it?
So sort of explain to us a little bit about how important that first layer is to that pyramid.
It's like the foundations of a building, right? If the foundations aren't there, you might get away with it for a while. And people do, because our bodies are really, really good at compensating. And so for a while you can get away with I've got people who come in and they're like, oh, I don't need to drink water. I'm fine. I'm like, sure, you will be for a bit and you might be able to get away with that. I know a guy who lived to 95 smoking 60 fags a day. And that's great. He was lucky, but most of us can't do that. And there might be a reason that you're still in pain. And actually, you might feel that you're fine if you don't drink any water. But actually, if you did, maybe you'd get out of pain. Maybe you're not thirsty, but maybe we need to flush some of this gunk out of you a bit. Or if you never eat protein, maybe there's a reason that you struggle to put muscle on, all of this stuff. And they'll go, but I feel fine. Well, no, you don't. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here. So, I think it's just getting the foundations right. It's just going, right, how can we layer the good stuff, the rehab, the good movement patterns on top of this good basis, because it just shores you up and it gives you a better chance of everything working better.
Yeah, because when you're in injury, you're already in inflammation. So if you have this bottom layer, if this isn't correct, then it's keeping your body in inflammation. And the more inflamed you are, it changes how the cells function. And this then goes on to affect things like your immune system, and you become more susceptible to other things. Absolutely. So actually it's really, really key, and you are absolutely correct, that having that basics of good nutrition, good sleep, hydration, just to get you started can make a big difference.
And it's not something that everybody can do on their own either. No. So, for some people, I absolutely do send them off to a sleep clinic, or I will suggest, counselling or psychotherapy, or, all these sorts of things, or go to see a nutritionist and look at, the whole foods and supplements and all the rest of it. So, or get a SIBO test or whatever it is. I'm not saying that physio is the only thing they need here, but if we can't get that bottom layer right, then they are less likely to respond brilliantly as we move up the pyramid. So I think getting that foundation layer really shored up first is key for a lot of people.
Yeah, and I mean, it's really interesting because this, as I said before, this really affects, if you don't get this, you don't progress well, then it is going to have an impact, not just on the pain you're feeling, but your quality of life.
Yes.
Or it's going to affect your mental health. It's going to affect, financially, if you're kept on long-term meds or having to have continual medical help, whether it's from a physio or a doctor or surgeries, it's just going to really take its toll on you. So So this is what I think is really exciting about what you do, is giving people that, no, you can get over this, but you've got to follow this particular process.
Yes.
So after you've gone through, someone's come, they've done they've got their sleep in order, they're getting hydrated, the nutrition's getting better. What's the next step that they need to take in terms of recovery?
So the next step for me is to look at the movement patterns. So what is the it's the ABC layer: alignment, biomechanics, control. So it's looking at your nervous system control of your body. So for me, that's looking. So the alignment for me is looking at, where are you at rest? What's your starting position? So I will see a lot of people, particularly my city patients. I'll be like, right, just stand up for me. Let me have a look at you standing. And all their weight's on their toes, like they're about to, they're in fight or flight. They're about to bop somebody on the nose, because they are, they're just ready to go the whole time. Everything is super alert, hyper vigilant. Or I'll see other people and they're sort of so laid back that they're sort of hanging on their ligaments at the front, and they're sticking the pelvis forward, and they're really your starting position, if your problem is sitting, is, there's a lot of postural stuff, which we talk about movement being more important than posture, and that's true as long as we're moving.
Yeah.
But for lots of people, that posture that they show me will be their posture all day. And that's where it becomes a problem, is the habits. So I look at the habitual starting position, and then I look at the how they move and how that movement is affecting their symptoms. And when I say I'm looking at how they move, I mean I'm looking at their whole body. Yeah. So if they get pain on sitting for half an hour, for example, I will look at something that replicates that sitting thing. So I might look at how they do a squat, how they stand to sit, and look at what's going on as they move from standing to sitting. But I'll be looking at how their pelvis moves, yes, absolutely. But I'll be looking at how their knees move, how their neck moves, how their shoulders move, because any of those could theoretically, if they are maintained for long enough. So if you're sitting like that with your arm over the back of your chair hours on end, that could set something off, right? Yeah. And I know we absolutely talk about movement being more important than posture, but if posture is maintained for several hours at a time, that's going to affect you.
Yeah, it's going to affect your movement as well, because there's the imbalances within the structures.
Yes.
And obviously it's interesting that you sort of getting to movement, because very often, I mean, do you find that people who are maybe more sedentary, so someone who sat at a desk more, is more susceptible to struggle with those kinds of imbalances than someone who generally has an injury from a sport, or being more active?
Well, it's interesting, because I saw a fabulous athlete this week. He was a pro tennis player when he was younger, but has had all sorts of injuries: shoulders, knees, hips, back, all sorts of stuff. And I looked at him, and he was so anterior chain dominant, like his quads were dominant, his abs were dominant, his pecs were dominant, and there was virtually nothing going on behind. And so that's a pattern that I more commonly see in desk workers.
Really?
Yeah. Right. Mainly because they're weak at the back, as opposed to just not being trained at the back. But for him, because he'd spent so long on his toe, if you look at the really good tennis players, as you know, right, they've all got amazing glutes, because they really sink into the ball and hit through it.
Best glutes and legs. I'd love a tennis player's glutes and legs.
But if you look at some of the younger players, or the even the ones who, because they are hugely talented, manage to get so far, but biomechanically they're not as good. They're the ones who end up with the Osgood Schlatters and the quads tears and the knee problems, because they're massively quad dominant and they're not doing enough with their glutes. So even if they can be superb sports people, I still see a shed load of muscle imbalances, even in those guys, if their movement patterns aren't good enough to sustain the quality of their talent.
So I guess then that makes it sort of equal. And
it's just different, isn't it? It's similar patterns, but with a different level of musculoskeletal capacity.
So in other words, an athlete is very dominant and
overdeveloped
with regards to how they have to play their sport, what they need to physically play their sport. Whereas someone who's more sedentary at a desk is just general
underdeveloped, but the patterns might be similar.
Yeah. So the key interesting is getting people moving, because I think a lot of people, as soon as they get into the position, they get a bit fearful, or I've injured something, I'm going to make it worse, which comes into the mindset. Even when they're starting to recover, they're still a little bit, protective of where they're injured. But it's getting them into the mindset, and you have to start moving, because was it a couple of years ago when I've broken both my feet.
Oh, don't do that.
Both my feet separate years apart. But it was interesting, and I'd had a boot on it, and the hospital said after a couple of weeks to take it off and start trying to use it. And my friend, God bless her, helped me get me walking again. I didn't realise how hard it was to get walking again.
We don't, do we?
But the interesting is that they now like to get you moving as soon as possible. And I think, and you have to get over that mindset of, I'm going to injure myself again, and it's going to be super painful.
Yeah.
And it's surprising how quickly that takes over, and how hard it is just to make those first few steps and build that strength and feel confident again.
Yeah. I mean, I was on crutches. I had knee surgery 2.5 years ago. And it was really interesting when I started coming off crutches, how I realized that I was sort of leaving my heel behind me and not really pushing off that leg properly. It did take a while for my brain to kick in and go, no, you have to actually push off that leg now. You can't just sort of drag it along with the crutches anymore. It's interesting how quickly our brains try and compensate and work around the injury, isn't it?
Yeah. How do you help someone overcome that? Yeah, do you find that's something that happens a little bit as you get older? Because we're always a little bit more fearful of these things.
Yeah, probably.
I think.
I think that's probably true. But I think some people just have never really moved very well. But I do a lot of movement patterning exercises with people, really sort of breaking down. The walking is something we think of as one thing, but actually there's so many facets to walking. So I will get people going, okay, so we're going to make, for the next 100 yards, we're going to focus on heel strikes. So I want you to make sure that your outside of your heel hits the ground first every step, and you really straighten your knee. Or I'll be like, the next 100 yards, I want you to really push off your big toe. Next 100 yards, I want you to really swing your arms so we get some counter rotation between rib cage and pelvis. So I do a lot of movement cueing, and sort of because there's so many things, I want you to really push off through your glutes and your calf, whatever it is. But I think we can only focus on one cue at a time. So I get people to have maybe 3 or 4 different cues, but one at a time, and they use them, and then they, sort of intersperse them. Yeah, I do a lot of movement patterning training.
Yeah, and is that kind of like the third stage, if you like, in your pyramid?
That's the ABC layer. That's the alignment biomechanics control piece. So that's looking at nervous system. That's before we even start building musculoskeletal capacity with the strength, flexibility, and endurance.
Yeah, well, I guess because you need the nervous system to be working very well to send the messages to the muscles so they can perform.
I want the good low load movements before we start adding in challenge.
Yeah. I mean, what would people expect? So, in terms of timeline, before they even get to the strength and conditioning side of things,
depends how good they are. Depends on their start point. For some people, I can pretty much go straight into that. For most people, there's at least a couple of sessions of talking about tissue health, and then going through some movement patterning drills. So for most people, there's at least a couple of sessions before we get to building musculoskeletal capacity. But for some people, it takes much, much longer. Some people, their nervous system just isn't as good at learning movement patterning. Particularly, you were talking about the, desk workers. A lot of them aren't that connected with their bodies. And if you don't have a lot of interoception, so being able to feel where different parts of your body are in relation to each other, or proprioception, so awareness of your body in space. If you're not very used to feeling those things and being aware of those things, then it takes much longer for a lot of people to learn the movement patterns. Or if you're somebody who's, hypermobile, or has some sort of peripheral neuropathy and things like that, or, for maybe they're diabetic, there's lots of different reasons why people might find it much harder to get through that first stage. Or just if you've really practiced dysfunctional movement patterns, like my tennis players, right? Some of them have practiced moving badly for years, and trying to unlearn and relearn is hard.
Because that's the thing. Your body gets used to doing things and adapts to what it's needed to do, which isn't always in your best interest, and actually can eventually lead you further down to more, as you say, injury, pain, and goodness knows what.
Yeah, I mean, if you look back at when Andy Murray had his hip resurfacing a few years back, and he recovered amazingly well from that, and the guys did a brilliant job. But then a few months later, when he started playing again, he started getting pain in the groin and the pubic region. Well, my suspicion is that the movement patterns that had got him to number one in the world were what he was defaulting back to.
Right.
But those movement patterns were overloading that hip pelvis area. And now that he couldn't feel it in his hip, he was feeling it in the bone that was left next to the hip. So we had to retrain those movement patterns to offload that area and learn to play with those new movement patterns. And that takes a lot of time and effort. And, bless him, he did a great job and his team did a great job. But my suspicion is that that's why he started developing groin problems after his hip resurfacing.
And do you think if he'd had your skilled hands on him, he would have
honestly, his physios are great. I'm not going to knock them in anyway. They're superb. But I think that was probably what happened and what they then had to overcome.
Yeah.
And would I have necessarily foreseen that? Who the heck knows? But also, I suspect that he maybe had to go through that in order to realise, oh no, I actually do have to change my movement patterns.
And I guess this is a learning for anyone who's, well, for anyone, not just necessarily a sports person.
Well, nobody before him has ever done that sort of surgery and got back to that level of tennis. Absolutely extraordinary.
Because you really have to understand that, okay, after this, I need to really work on rethinking my movement patterns and readapting.
Yeah, and you have to really know that, not just intellectually, but really, really viscerally, don't you? And really believe it with your whole body, and that's hard. So maybe he actually needed a month or two of groin problems to really get that into his head.
Well, they often say, before you make any changes, things have got to get pretty bad before you decide.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it takes a lot to get people.
It's a bit of a wake-up call.
Yeah.
So the next layer on your health pyramid.
Yeah.
To then get into the start of the strengthening part.
Yes. So that's the next layer is strength, flexibility, endurance, and so then we look at. And again, not everybody needs all of those in the same proportions. So, but that we're getting towards the sort of performance stage at this point. So we're going, somebody who is, the obvious example would be somebody like, a power lifter or a male gymnast or something like that. Their big thing is going to be they need loads of strength, and your marathon runner is going to need loads of endurance. So we're going to focus on, whichever end they need. So in my book, I've got the story of one of my patients who he is solid and muscular and strong, and he looks like a rugby player, but his goal was to run a marathon. And so when I initially and he had knee pain, and he was getting knee pain at sort of the 10-mile point every time he started training to run a blooming marathon, because he's not built for it. And so, but when I tested all of his muscles when he just came into physio, I couldn't find anything wrong with him, because he was strong, he was fit, he was, everything seemed to be working pretty well biomechanically, his control was good. And then we thought, well, the problem kicks in after 10 miles. So right, go do a 10-mile run, come and, book your physio session for straight after your 10-mile run. And we realized that his glutes were fatiguing at about the 10-mile point.
Okay.
And so for him, we needed to work on strength combined with endurance, because there was no point just working on strength. His strength was great, but his strength after 10 miles was not so great.
So he was good at the short, sharp stuff. But
that's right. Yeah, he was built for power. He wasn't built for, running miles. So we got him doing his glutes exercises after a 10-mile run. Poor bugger.
So that's a good lesson for anyone thinking of doing next year's marathon.
Yeah. Before you go and see your physio with an injury, think about exactly when it comes on.
Well, this again is, if you want to, because lots of people like to take part in the marathon, but are you built for endurance? And if you're not, then how do you train? How do you adapt your body for that?
Yeah. Or why do you want to do it? I've done it once myself, and I'm never going to do it again.
Well, you've got to have a big reason. They like to call it their why, doesn't it? Their big why.
I had my why, and I did it once, and that's enough. Thank you very much. Tick. But I will support other people to do it. I just have no desire to do it again myself.
But that's noble. So good. Everyone needs a bit of support, especially.
Doesn't mean I don't think they're nuts.
Actually, there's some people out there do some crazy extreme sports more than marathons, and I think, I take my hat off to them, but
not for me.
Yeah. So that's interesting, actually, that you say that, because it's not just about that your feet in this problem. You're starting to have this problem. It's where in what you're doing, as is it starting?
What triggers it? When does it start? What brings it on? Yeah.
And I think that's quite a little detail that a lot of people, I wouldn't have thought about that necessarily.
It took me a while to pick that one up.
Yeah. And of course, someone isn't going to know this by themselves.
No. Well, I mean, you can think about it. You can try and look for patterns.
Yeah.
And the more patterns you can give your physio, the more data you can give your physio when you first go in, the more likely they are to be able to, help you problem solve.
So really, the details are really important when it comes to going to your physio and going prepared with as much knowledge as you've got about what you're feeling, how it happened, when it happened, and all your past, your medical history, your injury history, where you want to be, So
absolutely. And that's all the stuff that I go through in the first session, because the more data I've got, what my patients come in with is a load of data.
Yeah.
And what I bring to that is a load of experience to help them curate that data and work out what's relevant and what's not.
Yeah.
But if they don't bring the data, then it makes my job a lot harder.
Yeah, and you want to have don't want to be in this situation for any longer than you have to. You want to be teamwork and living your life. So it's
got to be teamwork, right? You've got to work with your physio. You can't just go in and go, "Here's my problem, fix me." It doesn't work.
Unfortunately, I don't want to say anything to anyone, but very often I think when you go into your physio, that's what it is. I've done it. Gone to my physio, so I've got a pain here, fix it.
Yeah, right. We'd all love that silver bullet to be a thing, but sadly, my magic wand got lost in the post.
Well, you are doing some magical things with people. So after all that, you then get into all the strength and the big stuff, the fun stuff, and building up their strength, their power, and their endurance.
Yeah. And then we can move that into what I call the sport specific piece. If people want to, right? Not everybody wants to do sports, and that's completely fine. But if they want to do sports, and sports is one of the things that sets off their symptoms, or if they want to really focus on performing better, then that's when we start to look at the sort of sport specific movement patterning. So that's when I'll start to look at how they hit the forehand, how they go into the tackle, how they go for the save, whatever it is, whatever their sport is. So I will spend time sometimes with coaches. I've worked with lacrosse coaches, rugby coaches, tennis coaches, boxing coaches, all of those sorts of things, to try and help people with movement patterning. The coach understands the cues that I'm giving the patient to make their movement patterns better. So I had in the book, there's a story of a lacrosse goalkeeper that I worked with, and she was great, but she was getting back pain when she was in tennis we call it the ready position, but essentially it's the position that you get into when you're on your toes and you're ready to be able to move in any direction to save the ball. But she was getting pain when she went into that position. Not ideal. And we realized that she was not using one of her feet properly. She wasn't sinking down into the arches of her feet, which would then give her the energy to be able to pop back up again. So she was twisting as she went into a squat. And so for her cue was daft. It was one of Dave O'Sullivan's cues, actually. I didn't invent this one, but I told her to think like she was squashing an orange under the arch of her foot when she went down. And when she squashed an orange, she was straight. Her pelvis was straight, and she was loading properly through both feet. But when she wasn't thinking about that, she was a bit twisty. So I got her goalkeeping coach to remind her to squash an orange.
So there you go. If you're going to go out there, take a couple of oranges with you.
Exactly. They'll be on the pitch sidelines anyway, won't they? That's what you have at that time, isn't it? Or it was when I was at school.
I think this is even if you're not a professional athlete, because I've had lots of clients who are executives and stuff, and they take part in sport and competitively, actually, albeit at an amateur level, and they take it very seriously. So all these things, there's useful information to take from the professional sports coaching perspective and video, and you can actually adapt it into what you're doing. If you think, oh, well, that sounds similar to something I'm doing, maybe I could try these things, which actually brings us nicely into your book.
Right.
How to be your own physio. And when you first told me it was how to be your own physio, I thought she's going to be putting herself out of business here. But that's not what it's about.
No,
so it's about empowering people.
Like
yeah. So empowering a person to help themselves in terms of, maybe, I guess, after they've finished their physiotherapy, they've finished their treatments, they can then take control of it.
So it's a bit of that, but it's also it's more about the principles and theories that I work with. It's how to think like a physio more than anything else, but with stories and principles and things to think about, and some possible cues. And so the idea is that this teaches you how to think, and then if you want to go into more depth on how to apply that to yourself, I've got online courses that people can go through the full self-assessment. So the book sort of explains the the why and a bit of the how, but doing the whole how was just too much for a book. So I was like, right, because it's a book, it has to be relatively generic. So the book is where we go through, what do I mean by tissue health, talk you through some ways to improve your sleep, stress, hydration, nutrition, talk about, the flow in of nutrients, the flow out of waste, how we get that working, what is alignment biomechanics control, what do we mean by the whole regional interdependence piece where, your foot could affect, like, I've got a patient who, she's a touch rugby player, amazing player, tag rugby, not touch, very important distinction, apparently. And so she had a 10-year history of plantar fasciitis, so painful soles of both feet for 10 years. And it massively disrupted her training, her performance, everything. And but it was coming because she'd been tackled and she had a stiff rib cage. And so at every step, she was compensating for this twisty, stiff rib cage, and both feet hurt. But the regional interdependence thing meant I got her rib cage moving better. And suddenly, within 2 sessions, no more foot pain. And I saw her recently. She had another injury and she's still got no foot pain. And that was 2 years ago now because she's kept the rib cage moving. She's amazing.
Well, this is the thing, where the pain isn't always where you need to be treating, which is
not symptoms. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, this is the thing, systems in everything, really.
Yeah, totally.
Not just with injury, but your health, your wellness, your work, everything comes down to a system. And I think for me, whatever it is you're dealing with, you have to have a really good system in place.
Yeah. And so I've got this, the analogy that I use is it's like if your light bulb keeps blowing and your light keeps going off and you keep changing the light bulb, but it keeps going, maybe it's not the light bulb that's the problem.
Yeah.
Maybe there's a problem with the switch or the fuse or the wiring or something like that. And that seems obvious when it comes to electrics, but not so obvious when it comes to the body. But the body's, just a really, really complicated, massive of systems. Yeah. And yet we still, go, my knee hurts, give me the magic knee exercises.
Yeah. I mean, well, actually, that's talking about magic knee exercise. That's actually something that happened to me because I was for ages getting really bad pain in my knee, going up and down stairs, and it felt weak, but it was a sharp pain right across my knee. And I've seen several physios, and they did everything from taping to, checking it, assessing it, helping me move, still getting the pain. I actually found a physio, my friend years ago. She related it. She found out it was to do with my lower back because I had quite a hypermobile lower back, and I did it a while ago. But I now then find out that I'm getting the pain in my knee, but when I make the adjustment to my back and strengthen that core bit, also pain. I've had pain in my knee for years. So
perfect. That's a perfect example of regional interdependence, right?
Yeah. But my God, I would have thought it was my knee.
No, right. Absolutely. Yeah. Totally.
Yeah. Because we're just focused on where the pain is, but it's not necessarily the case.
That's how we've evolved, isn't it?
So, I mean, this book then is going to be a revolutionary for many people, really, getting them to think.
Well, let's hope so.
It will be. And the great thing is about you, if anyone decides they want to get in touch with you and they want your help, you even go as far, because I know, and I wanted to bring this up because I think this is something also that's really exciting about what you do, is you actually will go into surgery with them.
Yeah, I will. Waiting lists and all the rest of it. If we can make the dates and times work, then yes, I do go and watch my patients having surgery. I'm watching one of my patients having an osteotomy in a few weeks' time, in fact. Looking forward to that.
Well, I guess it helps you as well see exactly what's going on. You can talk to the surgeon, and you've got some really great information you can take away with you with that patient. And also, it must be comforting for the patient as well.
I think some of them it is. Yeah, I think some of them think it's a bit weird, but most of them go with it. Like, why would you want to see my blood? I'm like, it's because I'm a vampire. Nothing to do with helping you with rehab.
You get them to give you a vial afterwards.
But yeah, I want to know. I can understand the theory of what happens in that surgery, but if I have the chance to go in, as you say, see exactly what happened in that surgery. Because sometimes, things go perfectly, sometimes things go wrong, they take a little longer, there's something funky going on with that patient's anatomy, or if there's something, if their tissue health isn't great, because when they're putting, if it's, for example, a knee scope and they're reaching in with their little probe, and I'll be like, how does that feel? What is that? Is it friable? Is it solid? Is it, what's going on in there? Is there a load of plica tissue that's getting in the way? Is you know, are they going to have to resect the fat pad at the same time? You know, telling me that you've had a knee scope is great, but if I've been there and seen it and seen exactly what they've done, it's going to be a whole different kettle of fish.
Yeah, it's just giving you another. It's giving you
and
another layer of those details.
It gives me another layer, but it also gives me. It's an easy way to build a relationship with the surgeon as well, so that if I then have any problems with that patient, I can then, you know, get straight on to the surgeon and be like, hey, you know that one that I came to watch you with? This is what's going on. Can we chat about it? And they're very open to having that discussion.
Was that hard initially when you first started approaching those first surgeons and saying, can I come along? Were they a little bit reticent for you to come in, or were they actually
love it?
They love it.
They love it. Orthopedic surgeons love showing off.
Big egos. We know orthopedic surgeons have big egos.
They love showing off. It's great. They're frustrated thespians, aren't they? They just love being on stage. and I love watching. So I'm a very appreciative audience. It's great. It works very well.
Yeah, I think I would struggle with that. I remember once being invited to. She was an osteopath, and we went along to one of the hospitals because they have the cadavers there, so they can learn.
Let's go with the dissection room.
Yeah, and I remember I was so anxious going in. I was feeling sick. I wasn't sure whether I was going to see all sorts of squishy things going on. And I was like really panicking because I don't like to see things outside of the body that are supposed to be in it.
Yeah, I don't in real life, you know.
But I was actually really anxious about the whole thing. But what surprised me is once you get in there and you realise actually you're not seeing fresh bodies.
There's not blood everywhere, you know. It's not, you know.
It actually I realised how quickly you actually look at the body and it just becomes a thing. It's just like you're rummaging through it as if you're going into your local fruit and veg store.
Wow.
Because you're so focused on, this is interesting. I didn't realise this bit was here and that was,
that's fascinating, isn't it?
And you become so engrossed that I took a step back and saying, hang on, I'm treating this body like I'm going to back fruit and veg.
This is a person.
But it's a person.
This is a person.
But it was very, very useful because you had a visual to see where everything was. Because although you're taught anatomy and physiology and you see it in pictures and you know, graphics and all this sort of stuff, but to actually see it in person, which is why I completely understand why you would do what you do.
Yeah.
Just gives you a whole different perspective.
We had a dissection room at uni, which was amazing, and you know, Philip Evans was our tutor, and he was incredible. And I go along when I can to dissection days at King's now because it's just extraordinary. But they start off those dissection days with a really good talk, reminding everybody in the room that these are real people who've left their bodies to science, and they are to be respected, and they do it beautifully. I always come away, you know, really impressed with how respectfully they do it. Yeah.
But it's a very, very useful educational tool.
It's extraordinary. It's amazing. It was the same one when I saw the. Do you remember the Body Worlds exhibition?
Yes.
Gunther von Hagen's and the plasticized people. I was working at Headley Court at the time, the military rehab centre, and I went with a bunch of girls from the physio department, and we ended up with this crowd of people around us because we were just pointing and, that's a sciatic nerve. Look at that muscle. And there were all these fascinated people because we actually knew the anatomy. And I think people are fascinated by this stuff, and it's wonderful. It is interesting.
Yeah, no, it is really, really interesting. Like I say, it was amazing eye-opener for me, for sure. So now, just to recap and everything we've done, just give us your top tips for recovering from an injury. Five
is probably pushing it, but I think the first thing is systems, not symptoms. So it's thinking about that circuit analogy. Is it really the bulb, or is it the wiring or the fuse or something else, or the switch, right? Second thing would probably be thinking about the body from the foundation up, because you can't build performance efficiently and consistently on a dysfunctional base. So you've got to think about the tissue health, then the central nervous system, and then the musculoskeletal system, and then the movement. So it's thinking about that whole sort of Jenga tower building block thing. If the foundations are weak, then you're more likely to fall, create some more dysfunction. Then I think the The third thing, I've probably got 3 rather than 5, is thinking like a physio. Assess the root cause before starting the rehab. Otherwise, you might spend ages going down the wrong path. Like I say, the magic knee exercises aren't necessarily going to fix your knee. We've got, and you know that from experience. And this is why, you know, all my, whether it's coming into clinic to see me, whether it's doing my online courses, they all start with an assessment before they move you into, you know, what do we do next? We don't, as physios, and, you know, in your profession as well, we don't treat before we know what's going on. And there's a reason for that. And so when people are thinking about rehabbing their own injuries at home, don't just go straight for my knee hurts, I'm going to treat my knee. Do some self-assessment through whatever means that you want to do it. Obviously, I think you should do my self-treatment courses, but you know, there are plenty of ways to assess your own body, but do that before you go straight down the line of, you know, rubbing or strengthening the bit that hurts, because the chances are that you're going to waste some time.
Yeah, really, really good tips. And I advise everybody to go out today and buy your book, How to Be Your Own Physio. That is going to be a good starting point. Now, if people want to get in touch with Nell Mead, where can they find you?
So for clinic stuff, and I'm just going to put this out that I've got a crazy long waiting list to come and see me. But if you really, really, really want to come and see me in clinic, please don't. Then it's at nellmead.com. And then for the online courses, it's at howtobeyourownphysio.com, and for the book as well.
Well, it certainly is. You could do all of that while you're waiting to get seen.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do encourage that. The other thing is, if you get yourself on my waiting list, I encourage you to do the online courses anyway. And if you still need to see me having done the online courses, I will take the cost of the online course off the cost of the initial assessment. So you've got nothing to lose. Do my online courses while you're on the waiting list, and see if you can fix yourself without me.
Yeah, exactly. Bonus all the way around. And then you've got all the information you need to take to Nell, because she's going to need a lot of information from you.
Give me all the data.
If you do have to wait, then it's well worth the wait, because you are going to get fixed. So thank you, Nell, for joining us. It's been really eye-opening. We're learning a lot. And I'm sure lots of people are going to go away and start thinking about their injury and the next stage for them, hopefully going out and buying your book and start getting that strategy in place for themselves. But for now, I want to thank you, Nell, for joining me. Really appreciate you coming on. And I want to thank everybody else for joining us, all those listeners out there. Can't wait to see you on the next episode. But for now, I would like to say thank you and goodbye.